I can tell you that as a mother, as a grandmother, this situation saddens me deeply, and it grieves my heart because I love my family. I love all my children. I love my grandchildren. I love the work we've done together for so many years.
You won't believe what's happening with Joni Lamb right now. As her world spirals out of control, she's making the shocking decision to sell everything. What's behind this dramatic move? Is it desperation, betrayal, or something even darker? The truth is finally coming to light, and it's more intense than anyone expected. Stay tuned, because this story is unraveling fast, and you don't want to miss a second. Joni Lamb's life took a dramatic and unexpected turn after the passing of her husband, Marcus Lamb, a beloved figure in Christian broadcasting and co-founder of Daystar. For many, Marcus was more than just a leader. He was a symbol of faith and stability, and his sudden death left a huge void not only in Joni's personal life, but in the ministry they had built together. The public expected a period of mourning, reflection, and gradual healing. Instead, what happened next surprised many. Joni quickly moved forward and publicly announced a new relationship with Doug Weiss, a Christian sex therapist with a past that raised eyebrows in the community. This rapid shift sparked a wave of backlash from both within the family and the broader Christian audience. For some, Joni's decision felt too soon, too abrupt. The timing of her new relationship, coming just 2 years after Marcus's death, left many questioning whether she had truly taken the time to grieve and heal. People wondered if her emotions were clouding her judgment, or if there were other motivations at play. Her choice to embrace Doug Weiss, who had been divorced and had a complicated history, only added fuel to the fire. Many supporters of Daystar were uncomfortable with the idea of Doug stepping so quickly into a prominent role alongside Joni, fearing that his past might cast a shadow on the ministry's integrity. Joni, however, defended her decision firmly. She publicly stated that she felt peace about the relationship and believed it was ordained by God. She asked her critics to respect her personal journey and her autonomy as a woman navigating life after loss. To Joni, this new chapter was not about rushing or ignoring her past. It was about finding hope and companionship in a difficult time. But for many watching, this wasn't enough. The rapid nature of the transition, combined with the public nature of her leadership role, made it difficult for people to separate personal decisions from their impact on the ministry. The backlash wasn't just limited to outside voices. Family members who had watched Joni grieve expressed deep concern and discomfort. They worried about the message this relationship sent and questioned whether it aligned with the values Marcus had stood for. The tension within the family mirrored the division among Daystar's viewers, partners, and ministries. Some remained supportive, holding on to faith in Joni's intentions, while others felt betrayed, hurt, and confused by what they saw as a departure from the principles the ministry once upheld. In the world of Christian leadership, personal decisions never stay private for long. Joni's quick move into a new relationship reminded many of the challenges faced by those in the spotlight, where every action is scrutinized and every choice carries weight beyond the individual. For Joni Lamb, this was a moment that tested not only her resilience, but the faith and trust of a ministry family and audience that had long looked to her for spiritual guidance. The public backlash was intense, but it also highlighted a deeper conversation about grief, leadership, accountability, and the complex realities of moving forward after loss. Denise Bogs had long been a trusted advisor and close confidant within the Daystar ministry, working alongside Marcus and Joni Lamb for years. She was deeply invested in the ministry's vision and cared about its integrity. Denise knew the pressures and challenges that came with leading such a massive Christian network, and she dedicated herself to supporting the family and ministry through thick and thin. Her relationship with Joni Lamb had once been marked by mutual respect, trust, and shared commitment to their spiritual mission. But as time went on, cracks began to appear. Cracks that would eventually lead to a painful and very public falling out. Denise's concerns first started to emerge when she noticed changes in Joni's behavior after the death of Marcus Lamb. The loss was understandably devastating, but Denise began to worry that Joni was moving too quickly, emotionally and spiritually vulnerable, and not fully grounded in the grief process. The situation became more complicated when Joni entered into a relationship with Doug Weiss, a well-known Christian sex therapist whose past included a divorce. Denise was alarmed by this new relationship, not just because of Doug's history, but because of the speed and secrecy with which it progressed. To her, it looked like Joni was making decisions that could harm not only herself, but the ministry Marcus had built. Denise approached Joni with her concerns, trying to warn her about potential pitfalls and urging her to slow down, reflect, and seek wise counsel. But Joni, wrapped up in her own feelings and conviction, was resistant. She defended Doug Weiss fiercely and dismissed Denise's warnings as interference. This was a turning point. What had once been a trusting friendship started to unravel. Denise felt increasingly alienated and frustrated, but she couldn't stand by silently while she saw what she believed were dangerous patterns forming. One of Denise's major concerns was Doug Weiss himself. Denise had spent time observing Doug's behavior and had even spoken with his ex-wife Lisa, learning about the tension and emotional baggage Doug carried from his previous marriage. She saw Doug as a man with unresolved issues who could bring instability rather than healing to the ministry. Denise felt he was manipulative, someone who was more interested in gaining influence than serving the kingdom. Her fears were not just personal opinions, but grounded in years of ministry experience and a deep commitment to protecting the legacy of Daystar. Joni's unwavering defense of Doug and her refusal to heed Denise's counsel created a rift that widened quickly. Denise's voice became marginalized, and she was often excluded from key decisions. The ministry that had once been a united family began to fracture under the strain of secrecy, differing priorities, and hurt feelings. Denise watched as the ministry's leadership seemed to shift from accountability to loyalty, where only those who supported Joni's new direction were embraced. The conflict didn't stop at personal disagreements. Denise became increasingly vocal about financial concerns within the ministry. She noticed how donations and ministry funds were being used, questioning whether they were truly advancing the mission or supporting an increasingly lavish lifestyle. Denise believed strongly in transparency and stewardship, and she spoke out against what she saw as mismanagement and a departure from the humble values Marcus had instilled. But instead of sparking reform, her warnings were met with defensiveness and silence. The tension culminated in Denise's eventual departure from the ministry. It was not an easy decision. She had invested so much of herself into the work and had hoped for restoration and reconciliation. But as walls went up and communication broke down, it became clear that continuing to serve in the ministry under these conditions was no longer possible. Denise left, feeling betrayed, hurt, and deeply saddened by the ministry's direction and the personal relationships that had been broken. Her departure sent shockwaves through the Daystar community. Those who had looked up to Denise for her wisdom and faithfulness were left wondering what had gone wrong. The ministry lost not only a valuable leader, but a voice of conscience and accountability. For many, Denise's exit was a sign that serious problems lurked beneath the surface, issues that could no longer be ignored. Despite the pain and division, Denise remained committed to truth and integrity. She continued to speak out about the importance of accountability in Christian leadership, warning others about the dangers of unchecked power and the need for humility in ministry. Denise's story became a cautionary tale about what happens when loyalty replaces truth and when personal ambitions overshadow spiritual responsibilities. The fallout between Denise and Joni was emblematic of a larger crisis within the ministry. It exposed how grief, unchecked authority, and personal relationships can affect not just individuals, but entire organizations. It raised profound questions about leadership, trust, and the fragile nature of spiritual communities. Many began to question whether the ministry that Marcus and Joni had once built could survive this storm. Denise's warnings and her breaking point serve as a stark reminder of the cost of ignoring wise counsel. They highlight the need for transparency, accountability, and genuine care within leadership circles. More than anything, her story calls for ministries to remember their true mission and to place values over image, humility over pride, and truth over convenience. In the years following her departure, Denise's voice has continued to resonate among those who long for a return to authentic ministry. Her courage to stand up against what she saw as wrongdoing remains an inspiration to many who believe that faithfulness sometimes means standing alone. While the relationship between Denise and Joni may never fully heal, the lessons from their conflict continue to ripple through the Christian world, challenging leaders and followers alike to seek God's wisdom above all else. Financial and ethical concerns within a ministry can shake the very foundation of faith and trust that followers place in their leaders. In the case of Daystar and the Lamb family, these issues became increasingly apparent as time went on, revealing a disturbing pattern of mismanagement, questionable spending, and a lack of transparency that left many supporters feeling betrayed. What was once a ministry built on principles of charity, accountability, and spiritual guidance slowly morphed into a complex web of financial decisions that raised serious red flags. both inside and outside the organization. From the beginning, the Lamb family ministry, co-founded by Marcus and Joni Lamb, positioned itself as a beacon of Christian hope and spiritual encouragement. People donated generously, believing their contributions would go towards spreading the gospel, supporting pastors and missionaries, and helping those in need. The ministry's message resonated with millions, and the faith community rallied behind it. But as donations grew, so did the ministry's financial influence, and with that, the opportunities and temptations for misuse. One of the first signs of trouble came in the form of extravagant spending that seemed at odds with the ministry's humble roots. While Daystar was receiving large sums of money, there were reports of lavish lifestyles enjoyed by the leadership. Expensive homes, luxury cars, and high-profile vacations began to surface as areas of concern. These expenditures were funded by donations meant to further the ministry's work. Many supporters felt uneasy, wondering how their gifts were being used and whether they were truly advancing the kingdom of God or merely fueling personal comfort. The sale of the Poppy House was a particularly glaring example that stirred controversy. The Poppy House had been envisioned by Marcus Lamb as a sanctuary for ministers and pastors to find rest and healing, a tangible extension of the ministry's mission. Yet soon after Marcus's death, Joni Lamb made the decision to sell the property. The timing and reasoning behind the sale raised questions. Was it truly a necessary financial decision, or was it motivated by personal reasons? The Poppy House was sold for significantly less than its initial asking price, and many speculated that this was less about ministry needs and more about distancing from Marcus's legacy. Adding to the unease were rumors and reports of opaque financial practices within Daystar. Some insiders spoke of a lack of proper oversight and accountability regarding how ministry funds were allocated. The transparency that donors expected and deserved seemed absent. Without clear financial reports or open communication, suspicion grew. People wondered if the leadership was deliberately hiding where the money was going or if there was simply poor management at play. This atmosphere of secrecy fueled further distrust. Critics raised concerns about whether the ministry was operating more like a business empire than a servant of God's work. The shift from humble stewardship to what appeared as wealth accumulation sparked a crisis of confidence among followers. Many longtime supporters felt they had been misled, donating generously under the belief that their money was changing lives and advancing gospel work, only to discover it might have been lining the pockets of ministry leaders. Ethical questions compounded the financial concerns. When leaders live lifestyles incongruent with the values they preach, it sends a powerful message to congregants and observers alike. Christian leadership carries a responsibility to model integrity, humility, and wise stewardship. The Lamb family, once admired for their spiritual commitment, now faced criticism that their personal choices did not align with the standards expected of them. This dissonance created a gap between the ministry's message and its reality. Doug Weiss's involvement in the ministry added another layer of complexity. As Joni Lamb's husband and a prominent figure within Daystar, his influence on financial and operational decisions became a subject of scrutiny. Observers questioned how much sway he held over the ministry's direction and whether his presence contributed to decisions that prioritized personal gain over ministry goals. His prior history and reputation also raised eyebrows among those concerned about the ministry's future. Denise Bogs, a longtime advisor and insider, was among the first to raise alarms about these issues. She had witnessed changes in the ministry's approach and became increasingly vocal about the need for transparency and accountability. Denise saw the ministry drifting away from its founding principles and worried about the impact on supporters and the broader Christian community. Unfortunately, her warnings were not well received by the leadership. Instead of opening dialogue, Denise found herself marginalized and ultimately forced to leave, signaling deeper problems beneath the surface. The fallout from these financial and ethical challenges extended far beyond internal ministry disputes. Several prominent Christian organizations and ministries began severing ties with Daystar. This was a significant blow, not just in terms of partnerships and programming, but also in credibility and public perception. When respected ministries distance themselves, it often indicates serious concern about leadership and governance. The damage to Daystar's reputation was palpable. Donors and viewers expressed frustration and disappointment. The sense of betrayal was keenly felt, particularly among those who had supported the ministry for years. For many, faith was intertwined with the ministry's message, making the revelations all the more painful. Questions about where the money had gone and who was responsible for financial decisions became common topics of discussion. Supporters demanded answers, transparency, and a commitment to restore trust. The situation at Daystar serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of power, influence, and money within religious organizations. While resources are necessary to carry out ministry work, without proper checks and balances, they can easily lead to corruption and abuse. Financial mismanagement not only harms the organization's mission, but also undermines the faith of the community it serves. Ethical leadership calls for humility, transparency, and stewardship that honors the trust placed by supporters. It requires leaders to put the mission above personal gain and to be accountable to those they serve. When these principles are compromised, the consequences ripple through the entire faith community. Looking forward, the challenge for Daystar will be to rebuild trust, if that is even possible. It will require significant changes in governance, openness in financial matters, and a renewed commitment to the ministry's foundational values. The road to recovery is difficult, especially when public faith has been shaken, but for the sake of the ministry's future and the people who depend on it, these steps are essential. In the end, the story of financial and ethical concerns at Daystar is not just about money. It is about integrity, faithfulness, and the responsibility leaders bear. It reminds all ministries and their followers that true stewardship is about serving others with honesty and humility. When those entrusted with spiritual leadership lose sight of that, the entire community suffers. The hope remains that lessons learned from this painful chapter will lead to genuine reform and healing, that the ministry can once again reflect the values it was built on and reclaim its place as a trusted voice in the Christian world. But that will only happen if accountability replaces secrecy and truth is allowed to shine through, even when it is hard to face. The broader impact on ministry and Christian leadership when scandals and controversies erupt within a prominent ministry like Daystar extends far beyond the walls of a single organization. It touches the entire Christian community, influencing perceptions of leadership, trust, faith, and the spiritual health of the church as a whole. The ripple effects from such events are often deep, painful, and difficult to repair, raising critical questions about accountability, integrity, and the very nature of what it means to lead in the name of Christ. When a ministry like Daystar, which once stood as a shining example of faith and outreach, becomes embroiled in public controversy, whether over financial mismanagement, personal scandals, or leadership failures, it shakes the confidence of believers and non-believers alike. Ministries that build their influence on trust and spiritual authority suffer when that trust is broken. For many followers, Daystar was more than just a television network. It was a spiritual home, a place to find encouragement, guidance, and connection to God. When that spiritual home becomes a place of conflict and doubt, it leaves followers confused and disheartened. Christian leadership carries a unique and heavy responsibility. Leaders are not only accountable to their congregations and supporters, but also to God. They are expected to embody the teachings they preach, demonstrating humility, honesty, and love. When leaders fail to meet these standards, it can cause lasting damage, not just to their ministry, but to the wider Christian witness. The public fallout from such failures often leads to cynicism about the church and its leaders, making it harder for genuine ministry efforts to reach people with the gospel. The Daystar situation highlights the dangers of unchecked power within ministry leadership. When a few individuals control decisions, finances, and messaging without proper accountability, it creates an environment ripe for abuse and mismanagement. This concentration of power can lead to decisions that prioritize personal gain over spiritual mission, eroding the foundation of trust that a ministry depends on. For the wider church, this serves as a cautionary tale, underscoring the necessity of structures that promote transparency, accountability, and shared leadership. The controversy also raises important questions about how Christian leaders handle personal failures and public scrutiny. Leaders are human and will make mistakes, but how they respond to those mistakes matters greatly. The Bible calls for repentance, humility, and restoration. Leaders who deny problems, attack critics, or prioritize image over truth risk deepening the damage. The broader Christian community watches closely, and the way a ministry navigates crisis can either restore faith or further erode it. Another significant impact lies in how these controversies affect the spiritual formation of believers. Ministries serve as role models for faith and practice, especially to young Christians and new believers. When leaders are involved in scandals, it can cause disillusionment, making it harder for people to trust God and His church. The fallout can lead to spiritual confusion, hurt, and even departure from the faith for some. This underscores the need for leaders to walk carefully, understanding that their personal lives and decisions have spiritual consequences for many. The Daystar case also highlights the importance of discernment in the Christian community. Believers must learn to test the spirits, seek wisdom, and not blindly follow leaders simply because of their charisma or position. It calls for a mature faith that can recognize both the gifts and the faults of leaders, holding them accountable while still showing grace. This balance is crucial for a healthy church environment where truth and love coexist. Financial stewardship emerges as a critical issue with broader implications. Ministries rely on donations and support from believers who expect their contributions to be used responsibly. Misuse of funds not only harms the ministry's mission but also betrays the trust of donors. This can lead to widespread skepticism about giving, impacting not only the ministry in question but also other ministries that depend on generosity to operate. The ripple effect can slow down important work and limit the reach of the gospel. The broader Christian leadership community also feels the impact of such scandals. Other ministries and leaders face increased scrutiny by association, even if they have no direct involvement. Partnerships may be severed, conferences canceled, and collaborations halted. This isolates the ministry in crisis and can also hinder the work of sincere leaders striving to serve well. It emphasizes the interconnectedness of the Christian world and the shared responsibility to uphold standards and protect the reputation of the church. In addition, the controversy invites a deeper conversation about the balance between leadership authority and accountability. Leaders need to have the freedom to guide and make decisions, but that authority must be balanced with checks and structures that prevent abuse. The Daystar situation reveals how ignoring accountability can lead to power struggles, family conflicts, and the collapse of ministry integrity. For the broader church, this calls for re-examining governance models and reinforcing principles that promote transparency and shared responsibility. Another broader impact is on how the public views Christianity and the church. Negative headlines about Christian leaders can reinforce stereotypes of hypocrisy and corruption, deterring seekers and weakening the church's witness. Every scandal is a missed opportunity to demonstrate the transformative power of Christ's grace and truth. Instead, it can become a stumbling block that turns people away from faith. The church must work diligently to restore trust through authentic repentance, healing, and renewed commitment to godly leadership.